My name is Michael Trajan-Todran, and I am today's host of the Landscape Architecture Podcast. And today's guest is Elisa Read Pappaterra. Hi, Elisa. How are you?
Hi, Michael. My name is Elisa Read Pappaterra. I am a architect by training, landscape architect, licensed in the state of California. I have a firm called Studio Pappaterra, and we are a full house landscape design studio that focuses on fire ecology and habitat within the wild-urban interface. The wild-urban interface is a definition, a federal definition, for the region of our urban, edge of urban, city urban edges and the wildlands, which is the open land, whether it is Bureau of Land Management or state park or whatever it is that people are voting against. It extends about a mile into the urban grid from the edge of the wildland, and is usually a area where you have either very low cost housing developments or you have larger state kind of properties. So the wildland is very much woven into these developments or other developments. But what happens with the development is that it makes it affordable for people to develop within these areas, but they are surrounded by wild lands, and the wildlands are habitat. And so every time we encroach within that habitat, we are reducing species connectivity, we're reducing just availability of resources for the wildlands habitat that is in that area. We're also increasing our fire risk. And that's because our dry climate has a history of fire ecology, but 99% of all wild fires are actually human caused. And so as us introducing into these wildlands, we are the ones perpetuating the fires. And so our work is to educate the homeowners that the beauty that they were drawn to need to be preserved, and how do their interactions and the way that they design their properties all the way out to their development, how that could be created in a way that's mindful and firewise, so that fire department can protect it, so that the properties could potentially be spared of fire, because it's not if, but when the fire is going to come. From soil to soul.
What does that mean?
Or from soul to soil. It goes in circle. What does that mean to me is that any property that we have the pleasure to be the stewards of as clients, or our landscape architects for our clients, we go back as far as we can on that site. And we go back to who were the original inhabitants of this property, what were their culture about, how did this property fit into the greater pictures of those people, but also the habitat that was there. So we look at what is our plant material, what is our habitat, and so in a way, we are always mindful of what was here before, and we kind of place Mother Nature and that cultural heritage as one of our clients, as part of the conversation. So we're constantly trying to bring back and give back on our sites. So it's the soul of the site. And then through what were the history, what were the layers that kind of like got to this point. So we understand the sites in a holistic way that way. And then we actually do focus on the soil, because soil is the biggest carbon sequester. And our soil, with the quality of the soil that we have on site, that we can improve, then improves the success of our landscape installations. And so we really go into improving soil, sequestering carbon, and benefiting the health of the habitat. It is definitely has soul, because you can tell when the soil is happy, the plants are happy, the entire site is happy, it's buzzing with wildlife. It's just, we have gardens where there are 3 types of hummingbirds fighting for the flowers, or just constantly zooming by, and at the same time you're seeing a plethora of butterflies and other insects, and and birds, and it's just that's life. That's what I think. Like when we're able to bring to a site a sort of frenzy, joyful habitat that is easy to maintain, that is low water, that is firewise. That is the most successful projects for us.
Let's talk about your collaboration with the Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica Mountains. That resulted in a defensiblespace.org website, a vital resource for sustainable firewise practices. Could you discuss the key strategies from this collaboration and that homeowners and communities should prioritize when building resilient landscapes in WUI zones?
So we have had several collaborations with the Resource Conservation District. They're one of our main clients. What we started with them was we responded to an RFI when I was at Rios under the guidance of Greg Kochanowski, who had lost his property on the Woosley fire in 2018. I think he was a podcast here for the 2018 Woosley fire event. So that was really sad, and that raised a level of knowledge and awareness for Greg and connection with Resource Conservation District. So they put out an RFI that we answered and won when I was at Rios. And so I guided the research and development of the website. And so with the Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica, a fabulous environmental professional named
Antoine Kunch.
He was a researcher, and we were creating this website because this website wanted to be an educational tool, because what happened with Woosley was that it was one of the largest, most costliest fires in California to that date. But it throttled 2 different counties, and there was so much misinformation between code, actual fire understanding, fire ecology, of national park fire, understanding for our areas, just a lot of misinformation. So this website put together a whole toolkit for homeowners to understand how to address it from the house out, what to do in the envelope of the house for new, remodeled, or retrofit, or how to then also maintain it. And then from the house out, the layers of defensible space of the garden. And it is a multi-disciplinary, multi-agency vetted project. It's helped a lot of people, and it was my way of diving really deep into the understanding of fire. That was like a 4 to 6 months process. We would meet every month with the technical advisory committee to review each chapter of the website. Included the fire departments for Ventura and LA County, the fire department building and safety officers for LA and Ventura County, Theodore Payne and California Native Plant Society. So it was like a robust team that vetted that website, and the information that came from that was extremely important. And I saw the need for education of this topic. And so that started our foray into the fire ecology. Then with Resource Conservation District, we created another grant from CAL FIRE so they would be free for the homeowners. And that was a follow-up to what they already were doing, which is the home hardening evaluation. And so once a property has a home hardening evaluation, which is also a free service through RCD, for wild urban interface residents in the Los Angeles area, then you get the landscape defensible space evaluation. And our involvement it was an RFI, and several architects, landscape architects and contractors responded. A few of us were selected, and we guided them to understand what to achieve in the analysis of properties. And so it was very successful. We had a good amount of projects, and it resulted both in an analysis of their site, letting them understand their risks, and also a solution, at a conceptual level solution for the gardens that they wanted. So we included what their vision for the garden was, which allows them then now to have a conversation with other designers or come back to us, which we're having some comebacks, to create actually those gardens.
Tell me about some of the defensible zones, starting from the building face and 5 feet out, and then go out.
In current code and in current fire design understanding for Southern California and Los Angeles, Ventura County, and Santa Barbara, there's several where that line is drawn changes a bit between counties, but it's basically 3 zones. So from the face out, your most important thing to do is harden the home. But once you do that, the next thing, the most important thing to do is what we call the zone 0 or the ember resistance zone. And that is 0 to 5 feet outside of the face of the house. Does not include the eaves unless there is a post, and then that is connected to the home. So then you will have to go 5 feet away from that, 5 feet away from decks and stairs. And so that 5-foot zone, as we mentioned, the ember resistance zone, is composed of non-combustible material, bird dirt, gravel, concrete, whatever type of paving stone you want. You could have potted plants as long as you can move them out of the 5 foot in case of those days where, what do we call it, the red flag days or a fire is nearby. And you cannot store any, say, log wood and barbecue charcoal, that you have to keep that zone completely devoid of flammable materials. And the reason is that the way the fire spread quickest is through flying embers. And so a flying ember could be the size of a golf ball, to the size of a football, and it could fly, which happened in the case of Woosley, a mile in the air, if it's driven by hot Santa Ana winds, for example. And that flame ball lands at the base of your house. It will extinguish itself if your home is hardened and the surface is also non-combustible. But if we were to find a bush, it's gonna burn that bush, and then if the bush is below a window, your home now is entirely on fire because that window is gonna pop. And so that's zone 0. And zone 0 is code, but it hasn't been implemented yet. It's about to happen. It's the period is almost run out. So it was starting this January, but it's still not happening. But it's code for every new property, and it might be enforced in current properties as a retrofit. And then from there on, we call zone 1, or that's your garden. This is the zone where it's between the 5 foot and 30 feet, 50 feet, depend on both grade and counties. So check your local codes. That zone is the lean green. What happens in that zone is that you want to keep irrigated. You want your plants to be completely devoid of duff and any like burnable, dry, no sick, and unhealthy plants. So this is a zone where you're gonna do your maintenance. This is a zone where it's your real garden. This is a zone where you have an irrigation system, and your irrigation system is gonna be potentially wetter parts closer to the house, and then tapers out to almost no water, because now you're entering the wildlands, right? That next zone, after the 30 or 50 feet to then 100, 200 feet, depends on your county. That zone is just for minimal maintenance, just to reduce the spread of fire. But this zone now belongs to the wildland, and the idea is just to also in like a fade. In a fade way, in a fade shave, you're gonna like maintain it less and less and less until it just becomes completely wild. And so you lower the spread of fire on the zone 2, and then you create a very green planting area, a well moist planting area. Low water is good, but you just don't let your plants go dry and too dry, and then you kind of create several layers of stopping the fire in between.
I'd like to talk about cultural heritage. So cultural heritage plays an important role in your designs. How do you integrate cultural narratives and ecological sustainability?
I would say that the same soil to soil or soil to soil applies to a much more urban setting. in the same way we would apply it to a wildland project. We have a project on our studio right now that is a farm to table in Carpinteria. It's a well-known restaurant, once hotel, two-part restaurant property in the Carpinteria community that's very loved. It's called the Palms Restaurant. And we went back into the history of the site. We understand that the Chumash, the Chumash of the entire Santa Barbara Basin, were the Chumash people, were the original owners of this area. And then we saw the history of the Palms, why the building was called the Palms, because it's a 1900 original construction. It had this giant, fat Washingtonia filiferas, which are the desert fan palms of Southern California, planted in the front, and they were about the same size of the building and fully covered the shaft with the fronds, and the building became this icon of the palms. Those palms are no longer there. And so what's there is now the Mexican palm and a Australian cabbage palms. And so we decided that the property needed to have more palms, that it needed to, like, we couldn't get out of the palms kind of thing. And so we are injecting it or reviving the palm idea with introducing 2 or 3 different palms within our landscape introduction, so that it is like a botanical collection and a homage to the Palms restaurant idea.
You received international recognition for your contributions, including the Garden of Reciprocity.
Domaine du Chaumont-sur-Loire.
Perfect. And how do projects like this influence your practice here, and what lessons from these global experiences inform your work in Southern California?
The Chaumont-sur-Loire project was really fun because it was an artistic landscape. It was an ephemeral, recyclable, artistic landscape. And so it had a very different connotation, but at the same time, it proved to me that the way that we approach design was always very similar. Our landscapes are very artistic, and our research about the site, the soul of the site, the botany of the area, the way that we research here applies there. And it was really good to discover how a lot of the landscape plant materials actually that we were accustomed had a version there or came from, so that how the world was connected botanically expanded for me in the moment of creating the Chaumont-sur-Loire landscape artistic project. And so we selected plants with a lot of thought. Every plant that we selected had a lot of meaning because it was called the Garden of Reciprocity, and the theme of the year was what is the ideal garden in our current modern world. It was just post-pandemic, and it was also when the whole world had realized the demise of our environmental conditions. And Chaumont was suffering from water issues and drought, and just like everybody else is. And so our project approach really was focused on bringing a sense of community and reciprocity between the natural world and our man-made world. I think I'm going to take a little step back. We yesterday were at San Marcos Growers, which is a institution in California, like you were saying, for 45 years.
So we're going to end with Elisa Read speaking to us, and I think she's going to really just kind of pull this spirit all together and send us on down the highway. Elisa, get up here.
Whew, no pressure. Wow. I don't know how lucky I got to be here today, closing this event, and I hope I don't start crying at the beginning of my talk. But the reason why I'm here is because I work as a landscape architect, and my landscape designs start with the nurseries. I don't design a garden without knowing what is happening at the nurseries. Every plant that we select, selected based on the knowledge that that nursery has put to this plant. Every plant in the shelves have been around for years before it comes to the market. And Randy Baldwin and San Marcos growers have been one of the biggest contributors of knowledge and or plant varieties that we have in Southern California, and we've been so blessed to have them. I'm deeply honored and I stand here before you today as part of a celebration as we gather to reflect on San Marcos growers' incredible 45 years journey. Today, we're not just saying goodbye, we're also honoring a legacy that has transformed the horticultural landscape of California. In thinking about today's theme, The Last Dance, I can't help but reflect on the metaphor of a dance and how it mirrors the life of this nursery. Like any great dance, San Marcos growers began with anticipation, curiosity, and excitement. In those early years, just as the music started and the first steps were taken, there was a sense of exploration, learning the rhythms of California's climate, selecting the right plants, and most importantly, the right people, some of whom 4 decades later and or many decades later are still here today. You've heard about the entire team at San Marcos. You've heard about Randy's amazing contribution. As we all know, behind a great man, there's an even greater woman.
Yeah. Right you are.
And this is the only reason why we have this event and this nursery here today. This whole team together, they dance into the flourishing years of San Marcos growers. They found their rhythm, and under the guidance and vision of and horticulture excellence of Randy, whose curiosity doesn't stop and is the reason why we have such great variety of plants available to us, they became fully immersed into the music of what became San Marcos growers. Randy's vast plant knowledge and database gave us confidence in expanding our plant palette. It showed us the landscape could be more than just beautiful, that could be sustainable, resilient, and biodiverse. The plants are the music of this dance, and could not be a more harmonious symphony for our environment. And now we find ourselves in the final steps of this particular dance. There's a bittersweet quality, as we've heard from many today, to this moment, as the music begins to slow. But like any great dance, the ending is just as meaningful as the beginning and the middle. It is a time for reflection, celebration, and gratitude. San Marcos growers may be preparing to close its doors, and we've lost many, especially this week alone. But its influence will carry on, much like the memory of a perfect dance, stay with us long after the music stops. For us, as professionals in this field, and I think that all of us have seen our growers are here, our designers are here, and our nursery people are here. And we need to meet each other, we need to talk to each other, we need to collaborate with each other. And this village that we are could only continue to happen if we are more involved. And so for us, the professional in this field, this ending is also a new beginning. We are left with a legacy that asks us to continue the dance, to embrace what San Marcos has given us, and take the lead in shaping the future of horticulture of California. We must continue to push for biodiversity in our selection of plants, think boldly about how landscapes can heal or sustain our environment, and carry the lessons we've learned into the future. We must cultivate relationships with our growers, share with our colleagues, and request that contractors and installers support quality nurseries, because our success only is directly tied to their success. So as we celebrate today, let's remember, this dance may be ending, but the rhythm carries on. It's now our turn to continue, to build upon this legacy, and to ensure that the future generations of designers, growers, and plant lovers can find their own step in this ever-evolving dance. To Randy Baldwin and the entire team of San Marcos Growers, thank you for starting the music, to leading us so gracefully through over 4 decades of a rich botanical dance, and for leaving us inspired as the final notes fade. To all of us here, let's take the spirit of this last dance with us, knowing that the dance never truly ends. It transforms and grows, just like the plants and landscape we create. It's our turn now to keep the botanical dance going, to ensure that our landscapes, our nurseries, and more importantly, the people who make it all happen, continue to enrich our natural world with grace and mindfulness. And I think that we need to connect. We need to all be together. We need to really pay attention to what our growers are growing, and also ask them what you like to see, because like David was saying, they have to predict something 5, 7, 10 years before it's even in our gardens. And so imagine how difficult it is to all of us come together. And if we keep losing nurseries and keep losing our biodiversity and our opportunities of having great plants, there is no landscape architecture, there is no more amazing gardens. It'll just be a thing of the past, and that will be a really sad future. So, don't want to end with the word dance, so let's dance.
Let's dance.
Let's dance, and let's bring the spirit of 2025 again if they want to like make a ruckus. But otherwise, thank you. Thank you, Randy, San Marcos. And San Marcos is one of the most influential institutions in the landscape nursery because of their incredible, insatiable desire of like expanding the botanical palette for us. And so for me personally, in my journey from architecture into landscape, from the very beginning, I was blessed to be introduced to San Marcos Growers by my colleague Howard Formby, and my first landscape job, which was Nancy Gosley Power. And immediately fell in love with Randy and the way that he documented all plants. And that is the sentiment for everybody in the industry, pretty much. San Marcos is one of the many amazing nurseries we've lost and are losing. It is happening really rapidly right now. Yesterday, we learned both that Tree of Life Nursery was closing at the same time as San Marcos, which is a huge blow. They are one of the biggest, nicest native plant nurseries in the area of San Diego. And also the Annie's Annuals had closed the day before. And so to be invited to speak for the last dance of San Marcos Growers, where we came as a community, landscape contractors, nurseries and landscape designers and architects, to say goodbye was really, really emotional and meaningful for me. Everybody that was in the speaking group, which lasted about 2 hours, there were so many of us that had to say something. Where are all my idols? Are the people that I have sort of chased and always befriended because I really love what they do, their vision, their work. And so I made the case of the palm, that we studied the cultural heritage of it, and are injecting a sort of an increased palm palette, so that we would have sort of like a botanical collection of palms in the palm restaurant. But the other thing we're doing is that we are blessed to have a roof deck and the ground plane, and we are heavily planting it with California native plants of the area. And so our roof deck was inspired by the local canyons and the way that yuccas kind of perch on the cliffs, and the ground plane is more about that beach, edge of the beach that should have been the type of plant that would have been at the edge of the beach, coastal beaches, like our native sunflowers. And so we also are designing a mural that will go on that wall. And this mural is basically like a mirror reflection of the town, from the coast through the valley, the farm valleys where the farm is located for the farm to table, into the mountains and in the sky. So it's a very mild, plein air kind of homage of the town, and it echoes the city logo for Carpinteria. And so that's one way that we wove all these cultural references on site and reinterpreted in an artistic way for us to give back.
Name me a couple of the speakers that spoke yesterday at San Marcos and what particular impact.
Why do you want to come on, Mama? I'm still pinching myself today about that I was part of that group, that I was sort of invited and welcome in that group, and that my idols are now sort of look at me with hard eyes. And to me, yesterday was such an important moment. And of the speakers, everybody was incredible and their stories are so important. But to me, the two or three most significant, if I had to choose, were Carol Bornstein, who is the Horticultural Society for Southern California. She's in their board, or I'm sorry, not sure the position for Carol, but she's very involved. But also Carol was the director of the Santa Barbara Botanical Garden, which is a native California plant botanical garden. And to her, we owe a huge amount of California native knowledge and plants. They are now gracing our gardens. Kathy Musel, who is in charge of the living collection at the Huntington. She has this insane amount of information of every single plant ever planted at the Huntington, what they have done to it, whether they're alive or dead, the tracing of the story. So her these are cultural heritage people for us in California. And of course, Randy Baldwin, who is the manager for San Marcos Growers, and whose thirst for botany has influenced our entire industry, and who I quickly saw as such a rich source of information because of how he would display the plants. He always will tell you characteristics of the plants, followed by the plant's horticultural needs, followed by where the plants were resourced and how they became, the story of that plant, and then some information on the Latin name of that plant and how it was named. And learning about plants through Randy's research is how I mostly started learning about the California native plants, or the plants that were part of our possibilities for our landscape, is how I was able to trust and expand my planting palette and become the horticultural botanist, exuberant garden artist that I've become.
If there was ever a time where there was a retrospective on your career and there was a young woman that was looking up to you, how would you like to be remembered?
I think that the universe has placed me in California. It was never, like young Elisa, I would have never imagined that I would have not only migrated to California for a master's, but the 2-year plan turned out to be a lifelong plan, and we are now at 24 years. But I hope that young Elisa will see the future Elisa, who is going to help California understand the value of our natural habitat. The fact that we are one of the top biodiversity hotspots in the world, and how important it is to protect that. And what California does, the world follows. And so I think my calling has been to kind of create a bridge of understanding of what the natural world is asking of us, or how we need to cohabitate and how we can cohabitate. And if it would be amazing if I feel that I really did accomplish leaving the world a better place than I inherited.
Where do you see Studio Pappaterra in 10 years?
Oh, retired in a botanical garden hunt. That would be nice. I feel that we have a really wonderful clientele and project diversity right now. Our wild urban interface properties in the higher end of the spectrum range between 4 to 40 acres. And so our habitat rehabilitation is significant. And I want to continue to be able to create that level of impact. We also want to continue to create education for homeowners in the wild urban interface, smaller scale properties or conglomerates of community developments in the wild urban interface, in a similar way, that we are all mindfully working with nature. And I honestly hope that the message that we're trying to drive out of both biodiversity, sustainability, and firewise is something that I am not the only one at all. In 10 years, it's the norm. Everybody gets it. And now the challenge is on a different one potentially, or we can thrive instead of being in survival mode. And so I hope that within 10 years, what we're preaching is I'm not the only one, but that it is definitely just the baseline, sustainable enough. As part of our very first conceptual site analysis client meeting, we gather that range of information available to us at that point from the history of the site, culturally, the soul of the site, right, to the ecology of the site, to then the permit requirements and the code of zone overlays that are on that site. And we are able to guide them to understand that the interventions that we're making are not only both affecting life and safety for them and or the firemen, so that we have to make decisions based on protecting the property, protecting life, protecting the fireman life, but also that those interventions that we're doing affect then conversely the wildlands and the habitat that was there, or interventions that were there before them that were detrimental to that habitat. And so the way that we weave this story together in from a big picture to the site, our clients are able to then understand and see it and see the value of returning to the site what we can return, as well as providing ample and adequate site access for the fire department. The same way we would coordinate with the civil engineer to manage the waters and try to find more permaculture, more horticulture ways where we can conserve resources, conserve the waters on site, rather than more traditional ways. Originally, previously, the thinking wasn't aligned with nature. And so we're constantly trying to modify the requirements or work the requirements into being more alignment with nature. I love a job site. And I love the CA process of the projects. And I know that we know so much. And there is our job as landscape architects and architects is to guide the design intention and the client's desire. But it gets to a point where the builders, their sub-consultants, which are experts, the budget, all these things then start having a pull into the overall look and end product. And so to me, our drawings are a way of expressing a design intention. And once we get to actual physical construction of these things, then it becomes a communal, collaborative effort. How do we achieve this within the parameters that are based on site conditions, budget, expertise of the materials and knowledge of the craftsmanship that we are using? So I do give a lot of sometimes creative freedom in a way to my craftsmen, to our masons and our ironwork people, because I think when everybody feels like they're being part of the project, that their voice is being heard, then we're all kind of like one big community, and we have a lot of repeated contractors and subcontractors, and so we've grown with each other.
And cried with each other.
We've cried with each other. We've shared bread many times and or drinks. We know about each other's kids. We follow up. I mean, Christmas time comes around and there's several people that showed up that I hadn't seen and usually send me a little hello and a wish. And I love repeating. I really, really love cultivating that relationship. The majority of our clients have come through our contractors.
So it sounds to me like you're talking about respect.
A lot of respect, yes. And let me tell you, because it's not easy too, because I am a woman. I'm a woman of color, I'm a foreigner. And so I am walking into a job site that normally is predominantly 99% males, right? And for me to establish myself as someone who was knowledgeable enough, I also look really young, so people didn't respect me much to begin with, because like, who's this girl? Like, what does she know? And so it's good that California and the level of projects I have are elevated, and like there is a level of respect, but there was definitely a lot of glass to be broken, and time had to pass for me to gain that respect, and you have to prove yourself over and over again, as we all know. But now it's family. I like all my contractors. These people are, I know that the success of my landscape are dependent on them. And so it's a collaboration, and I really, really enjoy it. And then we can always figure out a solution. That's the other thing.
Why is that attitude important? That let's figure it out. Why is that important?
Because you can only plan so much in drawings. You can only plan so much in the vacuum of a computer. Even as much as you understand the site, there's so much you can only plan so much. And the best part is when things come together the way they need to come together, because you're listening to the needs of that moment in that space.
What's been the most rewarding part about Studio Pappaterra for you thus far?
Growth.
Growth, how so?
I think that I had never been my own boss. I had never owned a company. I've never had the responsibility to make sure that I was bringing my income and able to sustain my family and my household and more, right? And so learning how to become a businesswoman from being an artist took a lot of growth. Becoming licensed landscape architect was also a really good growth that all coincided together. The parts of design and construction administration were not really something that I needed to learn much about, but the parts of actually grading, because since I have a background in architecture, I never took a professional grading class, was really fundamental, and I learned a lot from that, and I'm now able to have a better design collaboration with our civil engineers, and also the part of just insurances. What is business? Like boiling down to like, oh, the liabilities that I have versus the liabilities that belong to this crew or that other consultant or the contractors, and where the line is drawn because of insurance companies and the way that this is gonna. So even like finding out how much insurance I needed to get to be my own, I was like, oh my God, what a curve.
What's your reflection on Studio Pappaterra right now?
We are on our third year, entering our third year. And I think that we've been very blessed with really great clients. And we were small and where sort of maybe coming from a mentality of like a small sort of management of things, and at this third year with additional projects that have come into our studio, it was a moment of like acceptance and growth, acceptance to the growth, to allow ourselves to be more. And so we are now in this process of hiring, and we are sort of finding the right people to support us, between accounting to a designer, the project manager of our team, to like who is our team? Is it 3 people? Is it 4 people? And so that sort of support system, it's exciting. It's an exciting new time for us, and I remember it. I just think that I'm looking forward to the next chapter. I haven't fully defined everything, and I like not to define everything the way I do with my landscapes. I allow for the process to come, and I think that like I have faith that we will be finding the right answers, but we will be merging into the right situations and creating the right possibilities or options for us to continue to expand and grow. Because the ultimate point, it is to retire and check out all the botanical gardens in the world, but it's also to leave a legacy of understanding of how to live in our environment, how to be actual like symbiotic with our natural habitat.
Favorite gardens that you would like to sit in?
It is a giant rock placed inside of a creekside rehabilitation meadow that we create. The scent. The scent is Artemisia, which, little known fact, is a wild version of tarragon. And so it has that both bit of a sweetness and a forest scent to it. That's filling the air. The wind is gently moving the goldenrod spikes of bright golden flowers in the meadow, along with the spires of the flowers of the native deer grass. The sound is a little small creek on the side trickling down. At the same time, in what we call the insectarium, which is adjacent to this rehabilitation creekside meadow, is a extremely densely packed, beautiful cottage garden, and that is buzzing with wildlife. Hummingbirds of many kinds are zooming in and out of that space. The texture is of a beautiful Santa Barbara sandstone that I would be sitting on in this garden. Normally, I placed it in a spot that it has just a small peek into the ocean, and it's kind of centered in the meadow, so you're buried in this meadow. And the air could be either a fog or just a crisp sunny day. Either way, the oak woodland adjacent by the creek is always just so beautifully lit, and shining, little dapple lights shine through underneath the canopy. It's my favorite space. The birds are always chirping. I think that landscape architecture is one of the biggest solutions we have for our climate. Avoiding our climate demise and creating the future that we all need. And so I think that everyone who has a chance to make a difference, doesn't matter if it's less than 500 square foot of a garden, make that difference. Look at what grows in the area, look what should have been growing in the area, and provide that habitat. You can also include other plants, because yes, nature loves pretty much everything, but be mindful of the habitat plants that would be in that area and bring them back. We really have a really great opportunity, and we all should definitely be putting Mother Nature and the future of the world as our main client as best we can.
Thank you so much.